everybody, this is Romy from Judah Music. As I promised, I'm going to be starting a series, a Bible studying series, having the first video up hopefully by this coming Sunday. I just wanted to give another introduction to where we're going to start, so anybody who's interested, you can be prepared. So most people know that the Bible, it has 66 books in it. It has 39 books in the Old Testament and 27 books in the New Testament. We're going to start by reading the New Testament, and I'm going to tell you why now. The Old Testament starts off with creation, the creation of the world, all living things, and the creation of a man and a woman. The Old Testament gives us a good example of how men and women used to be able to communicate with God. In the beginning, Adam and Eve were allowed to talk to God freely as if he were their best friend, roaming freely about in the garden without a care in the world. But when sin came into their lives, there was a separation between God and men. They were no longer able to communicate with God the same way that they were before. So then Adam and Eve went out into the world and they began to populate the world by having children. Because there was no direct communication with God anymore, their children ended up doing things that they felt in their human nature to do. These things were not pleasing to God, such as Cain killing his brother Abel. And there are instances when God spoke to his people still in the beginning. He rebuked Cain for having killed his brother Abel. But as time went on, God began to raise up people who were his oracles, people who he gave his will to, and they presented his will to the people. I believe Noah was one of the first prophetic voices, but what that actually was just that Noah was able to have a relationship with God and communicate with God so that he knew what God's plans were. So the Old Testament is filled up with prophets and God's people, which became predominantly the Israelites in the beginning. And you'll see them being led by prophets. Eventually, the people, or the children of Israel, have a look at the other kingdoms of the world and how they all have kings or rulers, and they decided that they would like to have a king for themselves. So they ended up raising up a king. His name was Saul. He was the first king of Israel, and that was the beginning of the dispensation of kings in Israel. But even still, now that they had a king to be another voice of reason for them, a ruler and a leader in all matters concerning the protection of the people and all of their other needs, they still respected the prophet as the voice of God. So you'll see that most of the kings in this section of the Bible have at least one prophet that is assigned to them, who advises them in spiritual matters in the way that they should go. In the Old Testament, you'll see examples of how the children of Israel sometimes rejected the prophets and disobeyed the word of the Lord. You'll see the difference between the times that they obeyed and they disobeyed. You'll see times where they were led into captivity and times when God delivered them. Times when it was a time of God's anger and a time of forgiveness. Times of war and times of peace. There's also some poetry in the Old Testament, which is actually very pleasant to read. A lot of poetry was written by David, King David, who was a psalmist and a musician. And there's some very beautiful poetry that he wrote to the Lord. But David also went through a lot of persecution, so not all of his songs are joyous, but most of them are full of hope. So that's a brief breakdown of what what is inside of the Old Testament. There was also the first law that God gave to his people, letting them know what he wanted them to do and what he did not want them to do. That law was presented to the Israelites by Moses, and that happened before the first king was elected. But the laws of Moses that God gave to him were highly esteemed, and it even trickled on to the New Testament. And still today, there are many Jews who still observe the laws of Moses. But why is it important that we start in the New Testament? Because in the New Testament, God came and gave us a new covenant. The new covenant is crucial for believers to understand today. While the Old Testament is by no means less important, I believe that it's good for new believers and even Christians to have a good understanding first of the new covenant. Then once you have a good understanding of the new covenant, it's good to go back and read the Old Testament, because another great thing about the Old Testament, it also has many prophecies that allude to the coming of Jesus years before he ever made it here. That is why the Bible is respected by some historians, because it's an undeniable fact that there are many prophecies in the Bible that have come to pass and are still coming to pass today. Many of those prophecies are in the Old and New Testament. So it's good not to forget about the Old Testament, but let's start by understanding the new covenant that God has with us and how we can build a relationship with him, which is most important, so then you can it makes it easier for you to understand the mysteries of his word. So, I do have a challenge for you guys. We're going to start in Matthew, which is the first chapter in the New Testament. And I want you guys to try and read Matthew chapter 1 on your own. Then when I come with the next video, I'm going to do chapter 2 with you guys, but there's a reason why I want you to try to read chapter 1 on your own. So if you do get a chance to read chapter 1 before I upload the next video, feel free to talk about it in the comments and let me know what you think. Until then, I hope to see you guys soon. God bless you and keep you in peace. And yeah, I'll see you then. Bye.